Good afternoon and welcome to Education Matters, WHRV's continuing discussion with area educators about the issues facing today's classroom teachers. I'm Doug Boynton, and today our guest is Dr. John B. Gordon III, Superintendent of the Suffolk City Public Schools. Dr. Gordon has been at the helm of that division since 2019. Suffolk is one of the fastest growing cities in the Commonwealth. What are the plans for a growing student population there? How is the division seeking new teachers amidst a shortage affecting schools everywhere? The State Board of Education has created a new controversial accountability system that's set to take effect next year. Some school leaders have voiced concerns. What challenges face the Suffolk schools, and what is Dr. Gordon's vision? We're taking your calls and questions. It's Education Matters next, after this news break from NPR and the WHRO Newsroom. Good afternoon and welcome to Education Matters. I'm Doug Boynton. Today's guest, Dr. John Gordon, Superintendent of the Suffolk Public Schools. And we should mention Suffolk Public Schools are stakeholders in Heretta, which holds the license for the WHRO stations. We are taking your calls and questions at 440-2665 and 1-800-940-2240. Dr. Gordon, welcome.
So happy to be here.
Your resume is kind of stacked. Elementary school teacher, senior high school teacher, basketball coach, dean of students, principal, front office administrator, college professor, and now superintendent. That's a trail of education.
Well, you know, when you come from a family where my mother was a math teacher, high school math teacher, elementary school principal, and my father, when he retired from C&P Telephone, was a college professor, you know, education was always so prevalent in our house. And, you know, both of my sisters are doctors. My middle sister, Donna, is a neurologist in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My older sister, Rhea, is a science professor at East Carolina University. So we understood the importance of having education to be there to really open up doors for us.
The background you have, how does that help in the job you're in now as superintendent?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things was my 10-year basketball coaching career, because a lot of the same principles that you use when you're coaching student athletes actually still occur when you're coaching adults, and really trying to motivate people to be the best they can be, to do whatever it takes in order to be able to support kids while also really reinforcing their own personal and professional growth. So I'm always going to be a teacher at heart. I'm always going to be a coach at heart. And when I taught elementary school for 1 year in fifth grade, I realized that wasn't for me. So I transitioned to the high school level because I felt like I could make a larger impact and really serve as a role model, especially to African-American males. You know, the wild part was when I returned back to Richmond, I actually was teaching at the same high school that my parents went to. So it was wild to kind of see, you know, kind of feel the atmosphere of the same hallways they walked through. But I also kind of really opened up the doors to let me see the different types of people that we have in the world and some of the struggles and challenges that some of our students bring every day to school. So in many cases, it just was a celebration that they were actually there. So when I became the principal of James Monroe High School in Fredericksburg, you know, thank you to Dr. David Melton for providing me that opportunity. It really allowed me to explore my leadership and to take a lot of the things that I had learned from Dave Savine, Neil Fletcher, a lot of other principals that I had worked for previously, and kind of cultivate that into my own leadership philosophy and strategy. And, you know, being a principal, a high school principal for 5 years was so gratifying, you know, celebrating every graduation. But that also allowed me to really kind of map out, if I ever had the opportunity to lead a school division, the things that I know are successful for all kids and staff to succeed.
In the time you've been in Suffolk, what do you feel have been your victories, the things that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I think it's really about putting Suffolk Public Schools on the map. The very first initiative I did was to be able to allow our students to take their Chromebooks home, which you would have thought would have been something that everyone was doing in 2019, but that just wasn't the case. And then, you know, signing a Nike deal, you know, thank you to Boo Williams, you know, AAU legend and great, that kind of helped me to be able to broker that, where we actually have a Nike contract for all 21 of our buildings. It's not just a high school level, but it's the elementary and middle schools too, and the kids are motivated to be strong student athletes, which means they're increasing their grades, which means that they have good grades, classroom management issues go down. If classroom management issues are going down, that means the teachers are happy and parents are happy, et cetera. And then, some of the more recent things that we've done, such as we're getting ready to open up the first lab school, STEM Academy, and then the current initiatives that we have within the state. Everyone else, when they were doing their lab schools, it was all at the high school level. We want to do some things a little bit differently and really try to create this K through 12 STEM model. We had already had a previous partnership with 21st Century Ed, where we did a documentary, wrote a book, really showed how STEM education can impact the different departments as well as your schools. Had an outstanding STEM camp that was sold out, and we actually had to turn some people away. And so now when we're thinking about partnering with our current Project Lead the Way programs that we have at Lakeland High School and Nansemond River High School, and now starting the STEM Academy at Booker T. Washington Elementary School, that's the next step for us to having the first K through 12 STEM model in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Let's get some specifics of the district. How many schools, how many teachers, how many staff, what is the depth of what you're managing?
Yeah, we have about 14,700 kids as of today.
Yeah.
We've had steady increases, outside of the pandemic year in our enrollment. 21 schools, 19 comprehensive. We also have the College and Career Academy at Pruden, which serves as our high school vocational center, in Turlington Woods, which also serves as our alternative education center. So we have 11 elementary schools, 5 middle, and 3 high. A total of 2,325 employees, a little over 1,100 teachers. So we, Suffolk, as you mentioned earlier, definitely is probably the fastest growing city in Hampton Roads. We have approximately 104,000 total people. But if you look, there's developments happening everywhere. And new neighborhoods are popping up, new infrastructure is popping up, which means more job opportunities, but also means more traffic too. So we're trying to really work with the city to be able to have that delicate balance to make sure that doesn't, impact or interfere with our transportation system itself.
How many teachers again?
A little over 1,100.
Is filling those jobs a problem?
Yes, this is a nationwide issue. It's a nationwide issue. One thing about the teacher shortage is a lot of teachers came into the profession at the same time, which also means they retire at the same time. So we've had to be creative, for a huge focus on retention, like several other school divisions, we've provided bonuses. But we also have a teacher pathway program where we have the I Teach model that we're really targeting many of our teaching assistants or long-term substitutes for them to be able to try to qualify to become provisional teachers. The same thing, we just started an associate teacher program. We had a partnership with Isle of Wight and Portsmouth where we had a Tidewater Education Consortium grant from the United States Education Department, but that's kind of been put on hold. So you have to be creative where you focus on retention, but also trying to find a way to make the field of education cool again. I'll give you an example, Doug. About 4 years ago, we had 12 total math applicants in all of our colleges in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and 9 of them actually went to the private sector. So here we are basically battling with each other, all school divisions, for 3 math candidates. So, the current generation, they don't want to be teachers like they used to. Teaching is still a well-respected profession. You get so much out of it. And I can tell you, it keeps you young. The first year I went to administration is the first year I got my first gray hair. But at the same time, we got to be able to meet our current student body, our current college graduates where they are. So one of the things that I also do is any student that graduates from Suffolk Public Schools, they'll let their school counselor or their administrators know that they want to go into education. I give them a guaranteed letter of intent for 4 to 5 years post their graduation date, trying to entice them to come back to Suffolk Public Schools. And we also added a signing bonus last year with that as well.
What percentage of your teachers now are from Suffolk?
Probably about 22, maybe 23%, about 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5. My Chief of Administrative Services, Dr. Rodney Brown, when we're having our pre-service week and our new teachers are coming back, he always asks that question. And we're just amazed at the total number of hands that go up. That also shows our kids that there's even more buy-in because you are being taught by someone that grew up in the exact same city that you did. They understand what it's like to be a Suffolk Public Schools student on the pros and the cons side. So I think that really also helps to build that student-to-teacher relationship, which is one of the things that's necessary for student success.
As the city grows, Norfolk has been talking about closing 10 of its schools.
Yeah.
You all must be looking at building more, right?
Definitely. My largest elementary school, Florence Bowser Elementary School, has 930 students. And we knew when we did a study with cooperative strategies about 3 or 4 years ago, we knew that that was going to be the next area that was going to have a big jump in population. But unfortunately, we have a lot of mobile units. We call them learning colleges. We're not going to use that word trailers, but we call them learning colleges that are at several of our schools. So I've made a promise. One of the reasons why our school board had hired me almost 6 years ago, because we laid out a plan and working with the city to be able to eliminate these mobile units. So right now we actually have John F. Kennedy Middle School is being rebuilt, one of the schools from the 1960s. A lot of our middle schools used to be high schools back in the day. And we're getting ready to break ground here in a couple of months on an expansion to Northern Shores Elementary School. This school actually had 12 mobile units behind it. And now with this expansion, we'll be able to add 16 to 18 classrooms, kind of working on some final details there. That's something that's well overdue. So, if I had to kind of pull out the crystal ball, I would have conversations with the city about expanding Nansemond River High School. That's necessary because we have a lot of teachers that are on carts and sharing classrooms. But we also need to start having this conversation about building a new elementary school between Creekside Elementary and Florence Bowser Elementary. The data shows that that is where the pocket of growth is for our schools. And we have just started to have conversations and are picking sites because we need to rebuild Elephants Fork Elementary School. So, I have a great relationship with our city manager, Al Moore. I consider him a friend. He understands why we have this vision. We can't renovate. We must rebuild because that's actually better for tax dollars, but it's also better for the longevity of schools. If you do everything correct with a school, you'll get 50 years out of it. But in many cases, depending on money, depending on proactive budget for building replacement or fixtures or whatever you want to call it, preventive maintenance, that's not always the case. So when you're looking at the situation in Norfolk, when you have schools that potentially haven't been taken care of the way they could have been in the past, that's why it becomes more efficient to close and combine than to rebuild. In Suffolk, we're actually fortunate that we believe that everybody's on the same page with the need to rebuild.
Now, a lot of the new construction, residential construction is happening in the north end of the city, and much of the south end of the city still very rural. Is there a tension between those two constituencies?
I would have made that statement to you about the southern part being very rural a couple of years ago. If you ask the southern residents now, it's different.
Okay.
You have not only the Port 460 project, but all up and down the 58, you're seeing more and more businesses pop up. And there's also at least 3 to 4 new neighborhood single-family home developments. So we should see an increase in enrollment in Forest Glen Middle School, which is my smallest middle school, an increase in enrollment in Lakeland High School, which is my smallest high school. The space that you have in that southern rural area, that's now the new focus for city development, to ensure that we try to balance out some of the amenities that we have in northern Suffolk so that basically all of Suffolk will end up looking the same.
We are taking your calls at 1-800-940-2240 or 440-2665. Your calls, your comments, your questions, welcome. It's Education Matters, and we'll be back right after this.
Opened my closet of really tired, old-looking clothes, and I think with this blast of courage and insanity, I'm not gonna wear any of these. I'm just gonna wear my snow boots and my trench coat.
Stories about midnight adventures. That's next time on the Moth Radio Hour from PRX.
This afternoon at 1 on 89.5 WHRV.
What happens when you gather a group of intelligent, interesting, and savvy Black women around a table for conversation? You get insight and provocative thought about what's happening in our country today from an African American perspective. Or in other words, you get the Another View Roundtable. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Join us for engaging conversation this Thursday at noon right here on 89.5 WHRV.
And we're back. It's Education Matters on WHRV. Your questions, comments, welcome at 440-2665, 800-940-2240. Our guest is Dr. John Gordon III. He is the superintendent of the Suffolk City Public Schools. State Board of Education has the new accountability framework. They've got several categories: exemplary, on track, off track, needs support. Your views on that?
This is challenging because this is the first time since SOLs and accreditation started in 1998 that we didn't have at least a year of prep time. Like, the majority of things didn't get finalized until February, and we're actually being, graded on that this year. And the magic number is 80, which we don't have a problem with if you're adding up your 3 E's, your chronic absenteeism, of course, your SOL data and growth, etc. But we were providing feedback for some things that we thought were concerning. And some of our feedback was taken well. Some of the things, we basically were told no to. But when you try to explain this, we had my chief of schools, Dr. Jeanette Bird III, did a tremendous job of explaining this to our school board and our school community. There were still questions that we couldn't answer because things weren't final. And when this information originally came out with the new accreditation accountability system, if you were to plug in last year's data, 60% of the schools in Virginia would have been off track, including many high-performing schools.
Many that were cited as being exemplary.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And so it's a challenge because we all know that many things are going to be based on the particular cohort of kids. But in this current system, for example, we're being judged for our biology SOL scores for this year's current seniors. So it's literally a test that kids took 2 years ago that is going to be the determining factor for that subject area. So, I'm the Region 2 chair for superintendents, and our executive director, Scott Braybrand, took feedback from all 8 of the region chairs, all of the superintendents. It's just been so much change happening so fast because we also had 4 new subjects that were being revised for SOLs within that same window over the last couple of years. And usually we also get, some prep time for that where we're told, okay, you got new standards that are coming out in the spring that you will start for next year. So this way you have that spring, the entire summer, to be able to train, to change your curriculum maps, to change your pacing guides. That didn't happen in this case. So a lot was coming at school divisions at one time. And unfortunately, some of our leaders and our teachers and students were feeling overwhelmed from it.
You mentioned District 2?
Region 2.
Region 2.
Yes, sir.
They asked, I'm told, that to put the whole thing off for at least a year so that everybody could catch up with what the standards are, and we're told flatly no.
Yeah, and we weren't the only region that put that out there. And it's unfortunate because teachers already have a lot of pressure. They already have a lot of things on their plate. And our kids do too. I mean, if you talk to our students, I have a superintendent's advisory council that I actually met with on Monday. And when I was talking to the kids, half of them talked about test anxiety and the pressure from it. And then the same thing can be said for the teachers and the principals whose evaluations are tied to how students perform. My evaluation is tied to how the district performs. So we were asking for supports. We were asking for answers. We were asking for additional resources. Some things we got, some things we didn't. But I think the biggest challenge is how it was expedited. Things were happening so fast that we were literally, as they say, flying the plane as you're building it. But the problem is the plane didn't have any rudders. So how can we fly? It's a situation where we're hoping that things may change in the very near future. But right now, it's almost as if we have to live with it.
Are you getting any help at all from the state? I'm told there are occasional conference calls or where they're trying to explain what's going on and what to expect. Are they any help at all?
Yeah, we get weekly newsletters that provide resources and information. There were more frequent conference calls when they were going through the development of it. But, as you already know, we are now on our 4th state superintendent in 4 years. So anytime, even though the leadership may be the same at the governor's level, anytime you have a new state superintendent of public instruction, the methodology or the strategy might be a little different. So a lot of adjustments were happening there too, where we had so much communication from Dr. Lane. We had a lot of communication from Dr. Coons, and now with Superintendent Gullickson coming in, we did have an extremely positive meeting with her. But the problem is we're in testing season right now. And so, spring break's coming up for some of us. Some of us were last week and right now, but spring break's coming up for Suffolk Public Schools next week. And then we know once we hit May, it's time to go. So you're trying to do as much remediation, as much support as you can, not only for preparing for the test, but also for student and staff mental health as well.
So, State Board of Education, exemplary, on track, off track, needs intensive support. What's your grade?
Oh, man, incomplete. That's going to be my grade, man. I'm politically savvy, man. So, I got to make sure that my voice, because of the different roles that I have, is not only being the superintendent of Suffolk and chair of Region 2, but I'm also the president-elect of the Virginia Alliance of Black School Educators. So part of the reason why other organizations have asked me to speak to our legislators, or I've been at the table with our state leaders, is because I have the ability to see things through multiple lenses. But the thing is, sometimes decisions are being made for adults and not for kids. And that's where I end up having a problem with it, and I end up having to voice that. And so for me, I wish we would have had an opportunity for more input. And I wish that the whole viewpoint of us, the practitioners in the field, would have been put to the forefront a little bit. We did get some of the things that we asked for. I'm not going to say that we didn't. But, being able to really show folks that if we don't do these things, if we don't have this amount of time, we're setting our students and our staff and our schools up for failure. And I'm really hoping that that's not the goal. Virginia has always been known as one of the best educational states in the country. And we can't base that on what a NAEP score says, the United States report card, when it's totally random what schools are taking it, totally random what percentage of kids within that school are taking it. And then we are never even told the results. We're trying to focus in on our SOLs. We're trying to make sure our kids are doing well on AP exams. We're trying to make sure that all of our students are graduating on time. So that's always been the primary focus, especially when you want to ensure that your students with disabilities and other reporting groups are having all the resources and support that they need to be successful. I'm not worried about 60 kids taking an extra test when those kids now have an extra test to deal with, when there's an argument out there that we already assess kids too much. So I think there has to be a delicate balance of what we're asking for our students as well as our staff.
Is the old accreditation scheme gone with this new system?
It will be, but they're still using the same reporting groups and categories. And we still want to be able, growth is still in there, but the percentages are different at the elementary, middle, and high school level. There's now also a huge focus on our English language learner population. But if you don't meet that threshold, then where does that 10% that counts towards your total 80, where is that going to go? That was one of the questions that I kind of put forward. So, yes, if you talk to the Office of School Quality, the old system is still being used to determine school improvement. But no, if you talk to all the superintendents, where because we now have these different metrics that are being used, the old system needs to be thrown out, and you need to focus in on how many kids are, for chronic absenteeism, and how many kids there are taking for the 3 E's, for employment, enrollment. It's just really about us making sure that people understand how to get to 80. 80 is the magic number here.
80 is the score on this new test that says you are on track.
Right. Out of the 5 or 6 categories that you have, and then your multiplier is based on if it's 10% in this category, 20% in that category, et cetera. And so, we've created a leadership dashboard with predictive models so that our principals know we need you to get this score. Talk to your school community, your parents, your students, your teachers. We got to focus in on this group. Everybody, chronic absenteeism is always going to be there. Kids can't do well if they don't come to school, right? But it has to be other supports that we're putting in place to get kids prepared for this new test. That includes some of these technology-enhanced questions. I mean, it was literally 5 to 6 changes that occurred in 3 years that have created some inequities for our students in our schools.
Do you have any reading on why the State Board of Education hurried this up?
I think the ultimate goal was to ensure that we could address the learning loss that did occur during the pandemic. Totally get that. Totally agree with it. Not everyone could learn virtually. My daughter was one that didn't do well virtually, right? But we had to keep kids and staff safe. Like, that's always our top priority. A lot of people believe it's educating folks. No, it's actually keeping students and staff safe. But you have to be strategic and methodical when it comes to finding ways to address the learning loss. The all-in grant that Governor Youngkin put in was great. Gave us some additional funds, gave us the flexibility to have before and after school tutoring in Suffolk. We also were allowed to continue our Saturday Academy, et cetera.
But the problem with one-time money is that it's one-time money.
Expires June 30th, 2025.
Right.
And that's something that, we had to address to determine, okay, if we use it for any positions, could we absorb any? Some of our positions had to go away that we had on part-time basis. And then you also had to find ways the things that were working well, to include that in your operating budget for the following year.
And that's always a concern. Because generally the CARES Act money, which was the money, trillions of dollars that came from the government to get through the pandemic and to recover, all of that money is going away, and that's the problem that you're talking about.
Yeah, it actually went away last year. I mean, the great thing about CARES is that it gave us flexibility. So I could take things off of the operating budget and put it onto CARES because it fell into the proper categories. I could buy new Chromebooks because of CARES. I could buy new instructional materials and textbooks because of CARES, things that normally would be a part of the operating budget. And it also allowed us to be able to give bonuses to staff that you try to use as a way to retain, try to use as a way to incentivize, to really make it cool about being a teacher again. And so, as a part of one of the outcomes of the General Assembly right now is that we have to be able to give a bonus by June 1 this year, whenever the budget is final, when Governor Youngkin signs it. But then we got to be able to determine, do we have enough year-end money to cover that? Because even when they tell you that you have to do a bonus, they never give you enough funds to cover the bonus. So luckily for me, I have one of the best chief financial officers in the world in Wendy Forsman, who is a master at this and understands predictive models in order to make sure that we can not only give bonus just to one employee group, but that we can give it to everyone.
You're going to be talking to the city council tonight.
Yes.
About your budget. You getting any reading from them? Are they going to smile on it or?
Our city council has fully funded Suffolk Public Schools every year of my tenure. And I was very open and honest with them when I got hired on October 14, 2019. I'm going to ask you guys for more money than you probably have provided before. And because I saw what the need was going to be. Before I got here, it was basically a routine $1 million increase every year. And then I changed it to 2, then to 4, then to 5. And this year I'm asking for 7. Because the 7 is primarily trying to make our salaries competitive with the region, as well as my ultimate goal at the time was to try to make our teacher salaries to be balanced with the national average. And we also know that we had some things that we needed to do to continue some of those programs that used to be on CARES were a part of the all-in grant. So we itemized everything out. So I get great support from our city council. There's always some political lobbying going on. There's, it's part of the game where there's going to be questions asked, which is fine. But, as long as everyone stays honest, I never have a problem about it. And I have great relationships with our city council members. They call me and ask questions, and I give them the real. And, usually by the time May rolls around, we get an 8-0 vote. But between when I do my budget presentation the last Thursday in February, and then that first or second week in May when city council appropriates the funds, there's a lot of stuff that always goes on.
And you're kind of flying blind because you don't know exactly what you're getting from the state yet, right?
100%. So now the magic date is May 2nd. And, originally it was March 24th. And that puts us in the bind because by the Code of Virginia, your locality has to tell you how much they're going to appropriate to you by May 15th of every year. But for us, we try to make sure that we have distributed contracts and we have a good idea who's going to be returning to us by the time that we get out for Memorial Day weekend. That gives our HR department and our budget and finance team about 5 weeks to close everything out for year end, and that also allows us, once July 1 rolls around, the new fiscal year starts, where we need to focus potentially some additional funds for recruitment. So the window was really tight. It's really tight. In the past, I had really tied people earning bonuses to signing that contract. You basically just turn it into a retention bonus. You have to do things to not only lock people in, but it also allows us to have proper planning throughout the summer.
You mentioned keeping kids safe, and if I'm remembering correctly, the state is talking about more money for security people inside the schools. You had an incident at one of the elementary schools last June. You've addressed that, but more people to provide security can't help but help. Right?
Correct. And we actually had our, we call them S3s. It stands for Safety, Security, and Support. Basically more security staff that's in the hallways that we use to go outside first before students have recess, that we use on lunch duty, that we use to patrol the bathrooms, etc. And that situation that happened at Kilby Shores Elementary School was so unfortunate. We got lucky, of course, but it was the staff there did such a tremendous job on how they handled it, how they were so professional. And, it's tough when you have someone in the community that has a mental health issue that's happening at the time. And, we wanted to make sure that we kind of laid out what our plans were, but what some people didn't understand is this was a pretty long investigation, and I'm not going to provide information until we have all the facts. And we had a great partnership with the Suffolk Police Department. They came in and helped us out. Our safety and security team under Dr. Rodney Brown and Dave LaFave and Randy Boone and Judd Wilson, they were at school. And, it's one of those things that the school community actually understood what happened. Everybody was thankful that it wasn't worse. But at the same time, you have to use it as a learning experience. You have to use it to be able to change how you're going to train some things. We've installed some new security equipment. I'm never really going to tell people exactly everything that we do because you never want to put your blueprint out there. But we've done some things additionally for safety and security in our schools because of that issue.
I want to talk about the U.S. Department of Education and what happens if they go away and what that might do. And we'll also go back and touch a little bit on the state board and history standards. That's still out there, right?
Yeah.
The history curriculum.
Kind of.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about that, too. Our guest is Dr. John Gordon. He is the superintendent of the Suffolk Public Schools. And we are inviting your calls and questions at Education Matters. It's 440-2665 or 800-940-2240, and we will be right back.
Knows you inside and out. Your family, friends, significant other, or maybe no one, not even you. On the next selected short stories of the Mediated Self with me, Meg Wolitzer. Join me.
Thursday at 1 on WHRV Public Media serving Eastern Virginia.
On the next Radiolab,
people were yelling at each other.
The story of a scientific battle waged over millennia.
Just a colossal number of people are getting sick.
And the scientists who put their lives on the line.
I should die in the cause of science like a soldier on the field of honor. Bang!
To reveal the secrets of the air all around us.
It's fascinating, messy, and in some ways almost cursed.
That's on the next Radiolab.
Friday at 1 on WHRV.
And we're back. It's Education Matters on WHRV. Our guest is Suffolk School Superintendent Dr. John Gordon. So they're going to get rid of the U.S. Department of Education. But what does that mean?
Man, that's like the $1 million question. So I saw the bill that was proposed that the Department of Education would be terminated by December 31st, 2026. And you've already seen the measures that basically 50% of the workforce has been laid off. So basically that's created some anxiety, even a little bit of hysteria, because we're hearing things such as special education is protected by different federal codes, and we're hearing that some of the programs may go to different departments, but we don't have concrete answers yet. So when you look at Suffolk Public Schools, for example, about $9.6 million total comes under federal grants, 1.1 for things such as impact aid and JRTC and stuff like that. But your Title I grants for, schools that are in low socioeconomic areas, Title II and Title III for professional learning and English language learners, and Title VI for special education. All of that is kind of up in the air. Now we know that special education funds are also going to be protected, but we just don't know where and when. So the conversations that are having, they no longer have those relationships. They no longer have that straight line of communication when you're having these questions. And anytime you're receiving federal money, the documentation and paperwork is very specific. And so when you tie that to not knowing what's going to happen, when you tie that to the letter that recently came out saying sign this or you lose or your federal money is going to be frozen, then school divisions, especially in some areas that probably depend on it more than Suffolk does, are really at a crossroads of making some tough decisions.
I want to talk about that letter in just a minute. Right now, I think we're ready to go to a question from Kate from Suffolk. Hi, Kate, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you so much.
You have a question for Dr. Gordon?
I do. We are relatively new to Suffolk Public Schools. We moved here about a year ago, though we're Virginia natives. And we had heard that Suffolk Public Schools didn't have the best reputation, but had had really good luck giving an underdog school district a chance in the past. And so we decided to stay here. And so far, it's been a 50-50 mixed bag for us. We've seen some really amazing things, but then also some things that need improvement. And I guess my biggest question is what the plan is for teacher retention, especially at the elementary school level. Elementary school has ceased being a fun place for both teachers and kids. It's become a lot of testing, and there's not enough play and levity in the environment and school cultures. And I'd like to see what your plan is to make Suffolk Public Elementary Schools competitive with places like Yorktown and Virginia Beach.
So I think the first part of your question is that Suffolk Public Schools didn't have the best reputation is kind of loaded, because if you talk to the people who are from Suffolk, they will probably say otherwise. Now, unfortunately, we have a pretty loud minority that tries to control the narrative of how the school division is being perceived. And like you said, we have some dynamic teachers, some great students. We don't try to compare ourselves to any other school division. We try to make sure that we are providing the best dynamic learning environment for our students. So our plan for supporting our teachers at the elementary level, middle, and high school, but I'll specifically talk about elementary because that's what you mentioned, is to be able to give the teachers what they need. I had previously mentioned the safety, security, and support positions. Part of the reason why we put those into the school was not only to have an additional body for safety, but also to be able to provide our elementary folks more free time. This includes them taking over lunch. This includes them taking over recess, because the only time the elementary school staff was actually getting their planning time is when kids were going to resource, their specials, media center, PE, et cetera. So when you take a look at the reasons why staff leaves a school division, many times these days it's because of relocation, because of jobs, but in the other times it's been because they have felt a lack of support. So we have put in new teacher coaches. We have put in additional mentors for our new teachers to make sure that helps with retention. And then we also take the feedback that our principals have received from us from our climate and culture surveys, but also the individual faculty meetings to show that we're putting plans to action. When I visit the schools all the time, I talk to the teachers and they are not shy about telling me what they like and what they don't like. And so all of our teachers understand and know that, their voice matters. I have a great relationship with the Employee Association of Suffolk. I meet with them the second Tuesday of every month, and any concerns they bring to us, we resolve immediately. And so I think that's what it really is about, that two-way communication, showing that they have a voice at the table, and then giving them what they need in the end.
At one of the local elementary schools, and I've seen the academic coach we have is amazing. Mm-hmm. Our S3 officers are two of the most dynamic people in the school. They're
excellent.
Wonderful. I do see where the teachers, especially K through 2, need a lot more support.
Agreed.
To be able to, and less testing for the kiddos.
Yeah.
Because there needs to be more play, more levity, more chance for the K through 2 teachers especially to have TAs more, bigger breaks. We've been pretty happy so far, but I see room for improvement, and I'd love to get in there and help.
Yeah, I mean, we always want to have our parent volunteers, and thank you for giving your folks a shout out too, because we need more parents like you that show the support that is necessary. And you're exactly right. There is too much testing, and that's just the downside of this accreditation and accountability system. Like, we are literally preparing second graders to take a test in third grade. And then once kids get to fifth grade, there are tests that are out there that are basically are a compilation of grades 3, 4, and 5. So the days of kids being able to explore, the days of kids being able to have fun, that's part of the reason why we're doing some STEM activities. That's part of the reason why we've done a lot of project-based learning. These are the things that we are trying to give our kids a chance to be successful, but it also the goal is to be able to put some fun back into instruction. So I agree with you wholeheartedly with what you said.
Wonderful, wonderful. I hope to see more of that hands-on project-based learning. I think it would really benefit all of our kids.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for the call, Kate.
Thank you.
So we talked before about testing, and Kate talked about testing. A lot of tests.
Yeah. Too many? Way too many. Way too many. I mean, it's just,
Can some of them serve more than one master, so to speak?
No, because, I mean, you basically have your requirements for your diploma status, especially once you get to the high school level, different requirements for advanced versus standard diploma, et cetera. And once you are we have to be able to have an idea of how our kids are performing. And for us, because of the way the system works, we have to be able to have some predictive models where the teacher-made test, the unit test that we're giving, the end of the 9 weeks test, they should be a predictor on how kids are going to perform on the SOL, because you don't want the student to be able to take this high stakes test, and it's the first time they've ever seen a test like that. And so, again, I remember when SOL started. We're talking about the 1997-1998 school year. I was teaching at Armstrong High School. And I've been in schools where we always perform well. I've been in other schools where there needed to be some additional support. But when you're changing the standards, like I mentioned earlier, when you're changing all 4 core standards in such a short period of time, that's the first time it's ever happened like that. And there will always be, because the research and data shows it, a learning curve, both for the teachers and for the students. See, what a lot of people don't understand is, even though we may have 36 weeks in the school year, you are actually supposed to get through all of your material in 28, because we try to make it so that you have at least 2 to 3 weeks of remediation time before testing starts. That's the pacing guides. That's the curriculum maps. So that then adds the stress to the teachers. It also adds the stress to the students. But that's just the way that things are set up, so that testing that takes place during the month of May, you want to be able to prepare for that, especially when you only have about 2 weeks once you return from spring break.
I'm going to change the subject.
Okay.
You got the DEI letter last week, or in the last 10 days or so.
Yes.
Reaction to that?
So I actually got the email.
By the way, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, they got a letter from the Department of Education.
Correct.
Saying you need to get rid of all your DEI programs or we will cut off your federal money. Is that in a nutshell?
That's pretty good executive summary there.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got the email 7:35 p.m. on a Thursday. And then I had local media outlets reaching out to me on Friday, and my response was, man, we just got this. I'm still trying to process exactly what this is saying. And it's unfortunate. We have an outstanding school board attorney in Wendell Waller who actually contacted the Department of Justice, because Suffolk is the only school division in Virginia that's under a desegregation order. And we had to see if what the DEI letter was saying was in conflict with the Department of Justice, because we literally have to bus kids, if parents want that choice, to other schools in order to diversify the building, And so based on the feedback that he received and the opinion that he just provided to me, our M2M program will not be in conflict with that. But so far, I haven't heard from a superintendent that has signed the letter yet. One of my colleagues is actually trying to get his school board chair to sign it because he doesn't want to put his name on it. I mean, you have fear now from superintendents thinking that if you do sign it and a teacher or a staff member or if something happens that's related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I'm going to say the full word here, that then means that superintendent can now be terminated for cause. And we've seen stranger things happen all over the country. You've seen federal money already been frozen. We saw that happen in Maryland a couple of weeks ago. Baltimore City, Baltimore County, PG County, Maryland are scrambling right now. And you've seen some other things happen in California because of that. And so we now have received an extension where the letter does not have to be signed until April 23rd. So Mr. Waller, our school board attorney, actually communicated with the board yesterday, bringing them up to speed on that potential conflict that I just talked about. And I'll be honest, I'm still gathering information because, we're talking about $9.6 million here in Suffolk. But what is the overall impact? Like, what are we saying if we sign that letter? You do have, I've read that some other superintendents in some other states have said blatantly no, they're not going to sign it. And maybe they're in a locality that they can afford not to sign it. But I know that the city of Suffolk, if we lost $9.6 million, it would be a struggle for us to do everything we need to do to support kids.
You mentioned the desegregation order, and you were looking last year at kind of rebalancing the elementary schools, and the last I heard was the board voted unanimously to kind of table that for now.
Yeah, they actually voted to not do it. And wow, Doug, you do your homework, man. That's impressive. But that was going to be our solution to get out of the desegregation order.
But if they're getting rid of the civil rights section of DOJ, how would any of that be enforced?
That is one of those $1 million questions that we've kind of talked about, and maybe that's putting the cart before the horse some, but what we kind of discovered from the feedback we got from our school community, and this led to some very passionate discussions, is that it was more based on people making the choice of where they wanted to live than it was about the race. And I can respect that. I mean, Suffolk is 432 square miles. We are the largest city in Virginia. So you talked earlier about, the southern part being more rural until now some development's occurring. So it wasn't based on the schools all the time. Sometimes it was based on the price value. We do know that schools determine a lot of times where people move to.
Oh, yeah. It's all interconnected. Real estate
always.
Values, taxes, schools, scores, it's all...
It's all part of the same piece of the puzzle. So, yeah, the board just felt that the timing wasn't necessary. So we did move forward with us still applying to end the desegregation order based on other things that we have done, based on the fact that we felt it was a little bit dated on some of the things that were actually in the original order. And so now we're just waiting to hear back to see what they say.
To be clear, that goes back to what year? 1970?
Yeah, I think it's like 71. It's almost... I think it was before I was born, to be honest. But there have been other conversations, and our communication that we've had with the Department of Justice has been positive. They've actually went in and interviewed the staff at Southwestern. That was one of the schools that was on the other end of the M2M program. And one of the things we were looking at also was to eliminate the disproportionality of discipline for our students. I mean, Suffolk is 56% African American, 31% Caucasian, 6% biracial, and 6% Hispanic. So we got the full gamut, right? But when you were looking at some of the discipline numbers, that should match the demographics of your kids. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So that was something that our team has really been focused on during my tenure.
Federal money, the two biggest chunks, as I understand it, are Title I and the aid for disabled students.
Yes.
Those are the two biggest that you'll be looking for. All of this is happening while you're trying to do your budget, while the city's trying to do their budget, while there's a lot that's just unknown.
And that really goes back to what I was saying, how the timing is just so bad. When you are trying to make sure that you have to be accountable for every dollar, when you have allocated things specifically to help students, if you don't have those supports in place, this means that you have to try to find other ways. That was the good thing about the CARES Act. The flexibility we had was one thing, but we could do a lot of the wants. Right now, our budget is very thin. It's really all about the needs. I have about $7.5 million worth of things that I had to tell our schools no. I had to tell our departments no because we couldn't afford it, because I had to be realistic with the amount of money that I was going to ask the city for, especially because the city is providing money to build JFK. We gave them some help and turning some projects over to do that, to expand Northern Shores, and now starting these conversations and picking a site for the new Elephant's Fork. So you have to be able to have a long-term plan, which means you have to make some tough decisions along the way.
What are the highlights of your budget request to the City Council tonight?
Yeah, the first one is we asked for 11 elementary school resource officers, one for each elementary school. It's looking like the city's going to probably have to do a phased-in approach for that. Probably will get 4, I'm hoping maybe 5 for this year. But that request itself is about $862,000, not including the additional money that was necessary for our officers to be able to cover our games, events, things of that nature. I'll also add an additional staffing position in our human resources department, because this is part of the battle where you have to be able to have more people to scan and staff applications, taking some of the pressure off the principals, making your whole process a little bit more efficient. We also want to continue on with our zero-eye security. This is software that I had installed in our cameras that really help us for weapon detection. The research says that anytime there's been, unfortunately, a school shooting or serious violent event on campus, whoever the person is brandishes that weapon 30 seconds to a minute before the event occurs. And so this allows us to have notification straight to the Suffolk Police Department, but also to our team. And then, of course, we had to do the mandated raise. 3% is what the state said that we had to do. Ours varies from 3 to 3.5% right now. The longer you are in a school division as a teacher, the more money you will be able to get. But everybody has to get the 3% increase, including administrators. Now, if I get more money, like it's looking like we potentially may get from the state, then it's my goal to be able to take that raise to 5 to 5.5%, which will make us competitive not only in the region, but also in the nation.
You seem optimistic that the City Council will smile on your budget.
I'm always optimistic, man. I think that's one of the good traits that my parents provided to me. In a book that I wrote about 6 years ago, the opening page is my kindergarten report card, and my teacher says, "John has a sunshiny demeanor," and that hasn't changed even now at 51. I have great support from members of City Council. A couple of them have grandchildren that are in the school system. One of them has a sister that's a teacher. One of them, when I first got the job, came in and told me that he always supports the schools because his wife is a former teacher. So I know that we're going to get the support there because our City Council understands that not only are we taking care of the staff, but we're also taking care of our future generation of Suffolkians as well.
I'm so sorry we did. I wanted to talk about your book. You mentioned it briefly. The book was, help me out here.
The Teacher's Lounge, the real role of educators in schools. Yeah.
I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to talk about that.
That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. Our thanks to Dr. John Gordon III, Superintendent of Suffolk Public Schools. You can find information about the Suffolk Public Schools at spsk12.net. And, of course, we should mention Suffolk Public Schools are stakeholders in Heretta, which holds the license to the WHRO stations. I'm Doug Boynton. Our program was produced by Dr. Barry Graham. Our audio engineer is Jordan Christie. Connor Worley answered the phones. Our theme music and original composition by Todd Washburn. Special thanks to WHRO CEO Bert Schmidt, WHRO Vice President for Content Heather Mazzoni, and Senior Director Audio Content and Audience Strategy Chuck Dowd. This and previous Education Matters programs can be found on demand at WHRO.org. Thank you for joining us because education matters for everyone.